My stepbrother slapped me across the face in a hospital corridor, in front of nurses, security cameras, and a recorder I'd been wearing in my shirt pocket for 6 weeks. He thought that would make me fall in line. What he didn't know was that I was already 3 steps ahead of him. What happened next didn't just end the argument. It ended him. I'm 32. I work in logistics management, nothing that makes for interesting small talk. I drive a used truck, I cook most of my own meals, and I called my dad every Sunday without fail. That last part matters more than any of the rest. My dad raised me alone after my mom passed when I was 9. He wasn't a perfect man, but he showed up. Every time. That counted for everything. When I was 16, he remarried. His wife was tolerable, quiet, kept to herself, never tried to replace my mom, which I respected. But she came with a son, 2 years older than me, my stepbrother. From the start, he was the kind of guy who walked into every room like he'd already won whatever was about to happen. We were civil, the way you're civil with someone in your office you don't fully trust. We coexisted. That was enough for both of us. Then my dad had a stroke last March. Not a small one. He spent 11 days in the ICU and came out with partial paralysis on his left side and significant speech difficulty. The doctors gave us an honest picture. Partial recovery was possible, but it required intensive rehab, consistent support, and time. I requested remote work from my company, moved into my dad's house, and took over everything. Insurance calls, medication tracking, therapy scheduling, facility coordination. All of it. My stepbrother showed up at the hospital on day 3. He was wearing a designer watch I hadn't seen before, carrying a coffee that cost more than my lunch. He looked at my dad in that bed for about 30 seconds, then turned to me and said, "So, what's the plan with the house?" I just looked at him. "Dad's not dead. He's right there." "I'm not saying he is," he said, like he was being perfectly reasonable. "I'm just saying we should be thinking ahead. The house has a claim through my mom's estate share." "It doesn't," I said. "Get a lawyer if you think otherwise." He smiled, that specific smile, the one that means he believes he knows something you don't. He patted my shoulder once, said, "Good talk," and walked out to take a phone call. That should have been my first real warning, and honestly, looking back, it was. I just filed it and moved on. My stepbrother had a method. He never came at you straight. He worked sideways. A comment dropped here, an email copied to the right person there, a question asked in the wrong room. He was in real estate development, which is really just a professionally licensed version of creative truth management. I'd watched him do it to business partners over the years. It never occurred to me he'd pointed at family. Over the next 2 weeks, I started noticing things. The overnight nurse at my dad's rehab facility mentioned that someone had called asking about his cognitive status and decision-making capacity. She didn't recognize the caller. It wasn't from our listed family contacts. I wrote it down. Then my dad's estate attorney called me. Someone had submitted a request for a copy of my dad's will, claiming to be his primary caregiver. The request came from an email address 1 letter off from mine. A spoofed address. "Did you send this?" the attorney asked. "No," I said. "Don't release anything to anyone until I tell you otherwise." That evening I called my stepbrother directly. "You requesting a copy of Dad's will?" "That's a serious thing to accuse someone of," he said, smooth as always. "It came from an email that looked like mine. I'm just trying to stay informed. He's my family too. He's your stepfather. He's conscious. He can speak for himself when he's ready to. Don't contact his attorney again. You're being territorial. That's not a good look for you." I hung up. And then I made the single smartest decision of my adult life. I went to my phone settings and enabled automatic call recording. I bought a small voice-activated recorder and started keeping it in my shirt pocket every single day. Not because I had a full plan yet. Just because my gut said, whatever is coming, make sure there's a record of it. 2 weeks later, my stepbrother showed up at the rehab facility unannounced. My dad was in his session. My stepbrother found me in the hallway and produced a document, prepared, notarized, ready for a signature. It was a financial power of attorney granting him co-authority over my dad's accounts during his period of incapacitation. I read it. Then I looked at him. Dad didn't ask for this. Dad can barely hold a pen right now. That's not your decision to make. You're one person, he said, stepping closer. You can't do this alone, and the decisions you're making affect all of us. Just sign it. No. His jaw locked. He stepped closer still. You better start thinking about what's best for everyone, not just yourself. Sign the paper. I said nothing. And then he slapped me. Open hand. Hard. Across my left cheek. Right there in the hallway, in front of 2 nurses standing 20 feet away and a security camera mounted directly above the elevator bank. Every word he'd just said, every syllable, was captured on the recorder in my shirt pocket. He straightened his jacket like nothing had happened. We'll talk when you've calmed down, he said. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. I stood there, cheeks stinging, completely still. And I thought, okay, now I have everything I need. I didn't go after him. I didn't shout. I walked to the nurses' station and asked calmly to speak with the facility administrator. I told her what had happened. I told her about the camera above the elevator. She looked uncomfortable in the way people look when they believe you completely and aren't sure what to do with it. Do you want us to call the police? She asked. Not yet. But I need that footage preserved. Today. She nodded. I asked one of the nurses who'd witnessed it if she'd write a brief statement. She agreed without hesitation. It turned out my stepbrother had already made himself memorable at this facility. He'd been dismissive with staff, loud with the therapists, and had once pressured the front desk to reschedule my dad's therapy because it conflicted with his availability to visit. He never showed up that day. Some people just can't help building their own case. That night, I found a personal injury and family law attorney who handled both assault cases and elder financial abuse. We met 2 days later. I brought the recorder, the call logs, a screenshot of the spoofed email my dad's attorney had forwarded, and a written timeline I'd put together. Dates, conversations, everything. She listened to the hallway recording. When my stepbrother's voice came through, "You better start thinking about what's best for everyone. Sign the paper," followed by the clean, unmistakable sound of the slap. She set her pen down. "He assaulted you," she said. "In a licensed medical facility. On camera. In front of witnesses." "Yes." "And this POA document, he brought this himself?" "Prepared and notarized. I didn't ask for it." She looked it over carefully. "This grants him co-authority over your father's financial accounts. Combined with the spoofed email attempt, this is a pattern. This could constitute attempted elder financial abuse under state statute." My attorney filed a police report for simple battery within the week. With the camera footage, the recorder audio, and 2 witness statements from the nursing staff, the case was clean. My stepbrother was contacted by investigators shortly after. He called me within an hour of that contact. "Are you serious right now?" His voice had a different quality than usual. The smoothness was gone. "You hit me," I said. "It was a tap. You're being dramatic." "The camera has a different opinion. So do the 2 nurses who were standing there." "I will make your life very difficult," he said. Slow and deliberate. Like he was measuring each word for weight. "You don't want to go to war with me over something this small." "I didn't start it," I said. And I hung up. Here's where his second mistake happened, which, honestly, one wasn't enough apparently. Instead of pulling back, he pushed harder. Over the next 2 weeks, someone called the rehab facility pretending to be from a state health board conducting a routine inspection. The goal appeared to be documenting anything negative about my dad's care, anything that could support a claim of neglect, which would then position my stepbrother as the better caregiver option in a potential guardianship petition. The facility flagged the call as suspicious and reported it to us immediately. My attorney wasn't surprised. "It's a known tactic in elder care disputes," she said. "If he can establish your father's care was inadequate, he can petition the court for legal guardianship. That gives him control over finances, medical decisions, everything." Can he win that? Not easily. Your father is recovering, communicative, and has his existing documents on record. You're already listed as his healthcare proxy and financial POA. But we shouldn't wait for him to file. We preempt. She recommended 2 things. First, a formal neuropsychological evaluation of my dad, immediately, documenting his current decision-making capacity. Second, tell my dad what was happening. That second part was the hardest. My dad was still in intensive rehab. His speech was slow and deliberate, and conversations took more effort than they used to. But he followed everything I said. His eyes were completely clear. I walked him through the whole thing. The document, the spoofed email, the fake health board call, the slap. His expression got darker as I talked. When I finished, he reached out, gripped my arm, and said, slowly but without any question, "Handle it." 2 words. That was enough. My attorney filed a preemptive opposition to any future guardianship petition, attaching the neuropsychologist's evaluation, which confirmed full decision-making capacity, along with all existing POA documents. She also sent a formal cease and desist to my stepbrother regarding any further interference with my dad's medical care or financial affairs. His attorney responded within days. They were still going to fight.
Fine.
I hadn't played my best card yet. What my stepbrother had never considered was how thorough I'd become. 6 weeks of voice memos, screenshots, emails, and a paper trail that started the moment he walked into that hospital room asking about the house. I had a documented record of almost every significant interaction we'd had since my dad's stroke.
He had no idea.
My attorney and I worked through it methodically. The battery charge was moving forward. Simple battery in our state is a misdemeanor carrying up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine. Jail time was unlikely for a first offense, but a conviction meant a permanent criminal record. His attorney was already trying to negotiate a deferred sentence. Mine wasn't feeling accommodating, but the battery charge was almost secondary at this point. The more significant action was the elder financial abuse angle. My attorney connected with the state's Adult Protective Services unit and submitted our full documentation. The spoofed email attempt to obtain the will, the fraudulent POA document he'd tried to get me to sign, and the fake health board call to the facility. APS takes attempted financial exploitation of vulnerable adults extremely seriously. They opened a formal independent investigation. Here's where his professional life started cracking. My stepbrother had spent years building a brand in real estate development. He sat on a local real estate investment board. He did speaking events. He ran a newsletter with a few thousand subscribers where he positioned himself as a family-focused entrepreneur building legacy wealth for the next generation. I want you to sit with that for a second. A man actively attempting to take control of his stroke-recovering stepfather's finances was publicly writing content about protecting family legacy. The irony was so thick you could have spread it on toast. I waited until the APS investigation was formally open and documented. Then I wrote a factual account of everything that had happened. Not emotional, not charged, a clean timeline. Dates, documented quotes from the recording, the police report number, the APS case reference, the POA document he'd tried to get me to sign. My attorney reviewed it for accuracy and defamation exposure. She cleared it. I sent it to 3 people: the chairman of the investment board he sat on, the editor of a local business publication that had previously profiled him, and the one that counted most, his wife. His wife and I had always maintained a neutral relationship. She wasn't involved in any of this as far as I could determine, and she deserved to know what her husband had been doing in the name of protecting the family. I included the hallway recording, the full audio, with the slap. His wife called me within 24 hours. She was composed, but her voice carried the specific flatness of someone who has just confirmed something they'd been quietly dreading. "I'm sorry," she said.
For what he did to you.
"And to your father." "You didn't do it," I said.
"No."
But I should have looked harder, sooner. I didn't push further. I just said I appreciated the call. What happened in her marriage after that wasn't my business to narrate. I'll just tell you she retained her own attorney within the week. The investment board placed my stepbrother on voluntary leave, pending a formal review. The Business Journal quietly shelved a profile piece they'd been planning to run on him. And when his attorney contacted mine proposing a global resolution, drop the assault charge, I drop any civil action, everyone walks away quietly. My attorney's response was a professionally worded version of no chance. The APS investigation took approximately 8 weeks. At the conclusion, they referred the matter to the county DA's office for review of potential elder financial abuse charges. The spoofed email attempt and the fraudulent POA document formed the core of the referral. Under our state statute, attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, even an unsuccessful attempt, can be charged as a felony. I want to be honest, felony charges weren't guaranteed. The DA had discretion over whether to pursue it, but the referral itself was significant, and everyone in that ecosystem knew it. Meanwhile, my dad was making real progress. Slower than the optimistic end of the doctor's projections, but real. He was doing speech therapy 3 days a week. He was starting to crack bad jokes with his therapist, which his primary therapist told me was a genuinely positive behavioral sign. In our family, my dad's sense of humor is basically a vital sign. When the puns started coming back, I knew he was going to be okay. 3 months after that slap in the hallway, my stepbrother's attorney reached out requesting a meeting. My attorney and I discussed the conditions. Everything in writing, nothing informal, no ambiguity. We agreed to meet once. His attorney did most of the talking when we arrived. My stepbrother sat across the table from me, and I'll tell you this, the designer watch was gone. He didn't make eye contact when he came in. Good. That was appropriate. The proposal was straightforward. My stepbrother would formally and permanently relinquish any claim, real, perceived, or potential, to my father's estate, property, or financial affairs. He would sign documentation acknowledging my sole POA authority. He would pay my legal fees in full, which had accumulated into a number that made him visibly tense. And he would have no contact with my father going forward unless my father explicitly requested it, in writing, confirmed through the attorney. In exchange, I would not pursue a separate civil assault claim beyond the existing criminal case, which was outside my control at that point. I would not escalate the APS referral further, and I would not continue discussing the situation publicly. My attorney looked at me across the table. I looked at the document. Then I looked at my stepbrother. "You slapped me?" I said. Not with anger, just stating a fact. In a hospital hallway. In front of witnesses. Because I wouldn't sign a paper that would have given you access to our dad's accounts while he was recovering from a stroke. He said nothing. And now you want to make a deal. Still nothing. I signed. Not out of generosity, I want to be clear about that. I signed because every single condition in that document gave me exactly what I'd wanted from the beginning. Legal protection for my father and complete, documented removal of my stepbrother from his life. The fight was already won. Dragging it out further would have cost my dad more peace than it was worth. The criminal battery case moved on its own timeline, independent of our civil agreement. About 2 months later, my stepbrother pled no contest to simple battery. He received 12 months of supervised probation, mandatory anger management classes, and community service hours. No jail time, but a conviction on record. In real estate, your professional reputation is the foundation everything else is built on. A battery conviction, attached to a publicly documented elder fraud investigation, a board suspension, and a divorce, doesn't announce itself loudly. It just makes doors go quiet. Deals that were moving forward don't close. Referrals slow down. Partnerships that seemed solid get reevaluated. He wasn't arrested on the street. He just got smaller, quietly, in every direction at once. The DA ultimately declined to file felony elder abuse charges, citing insufficient evidence of completed fraud as opposed to attempted. I was disappointed for about 2 days. Then my attorney reminded me what had actually happened. My stepbrother had a criminal record, had been removed from a professional board, had been investigated by state APS, had lost his marriage, and had been legally barred from any involvement in my father's affairs. All of that because he slapped me in a hallway over a document I never signed. He really should have just let me say no. That's it. That was the whole off-ramp. He missed it. My dad came home 4 months after the stroke. Not fully recovered. He still has weakness on his left side and his speech is measured and deliberate in a way it wasn't before. But he's home. He's doing outpatient therapy twice a week. He beat me at chess last Thursday, and he absolutely gloated about it for the rest of the evening. Completely, insufferably smug about it. Which means he's fully himself. One evening not long after he came home, we were sitting on his porch. He asked me, in his slower way, what had finally happened with my stepbrother. I gave him the short version. He listened, nodded a few times, and sat with it for a while. "You handled it," he said. "Yeah," I said. "Good." That was the conversation. And it was enough. Here's what I keep coming back to. My stepbrother wasn't some theatrical villain. He was just a man who had always gotten what he wanted by applying the right pressure in the right places, and he had never once encountered someone willing to document everything, stay patient, and wait. He mistook my patience for weakness. He mistook my silence for hesitation. Those are the two most expensive mistakes an entitled person can make. I'm not someone who enjoys this kind of conflict. I still drive the same used truck. I still cook my own meals. But if you put your hand on my face in a hospital hallway because I won't let you steal from my father, I will spend the next 6 months methodically, legally, and thoroughly taking apart everything you built. That's not a threat. That's just math. If this story hit different, and you want to see more of what happens when patient people finally stop being patient, go subscribe. Because if I survived all of that, I can absolutely keep showing up for you every week.